What's up, Colorado? Chris Lopez here, and I have Nathan Adams with redT back in the studio. Early this year, he came in. We had a great chat talking about his career growth here in Denver, him building a greener Colorado, and what's going on in the development landscape scene. And we had great feedback. Lots of people saying, hey, I want to learn more about building green. I want to hear more about what Nathan's up to. And I want to know what's going on in the development world with these high interest rates. So I got Nathan back in the hot seat. What's up, Nathan?
Not too much. I actually like being in the hot seat. I remember clearly when I was here the first time, and I had a lot of fun chatting with you. And I'm glad you got really good feedback from the last podcast. So
I'm going to take that as a challenge to throw you a curveball question and really put you in the hot seat today.
I'll take that challenge.
All right. I love it. All right. So let's start off with, I think your exact mission statement is building a greener Colorado. And I wanted to hear more about what you've done since we did the last podcast, because I had so many listeners and investors really latch on to it. They love the mission of it. They want to be a part of it. They love, the theme of it. They love being more efficient. Just what is going on there?
So when we started, we looked at it and said, we're going to be a green builder. But before we did that, we did like 6 months of research. We talked to our existing clients because we knew when we drew that line in the sand to say, we are only going to buy the land, do the architecture, do the design, build it, sell it if it's built to a LEED Gold certification or higher. And really, we didn't start at LEED Gold. We started at Department of Energy Net Zero Ready Home. That was our very first one. And our energy consultant, as we're going.
When was this? How long ago?
2.5, 3 years ago.
Okay.
So as we're going through that first one, our energy consultant said, hey guys, you're actually at LEED Gold already. We just didn't start there. We didn't do the appropriate tests. They're like, go there on the very next one. So we quickly changed our disposition to what I just gave you. And that was, it's got to be a LEED Gold certification or higher. So fast forward to right now, we're delivering homes 2 through 8 built to a LEED Zero certification. Now, I want to caveat that because the U.S. Green Building Council doesn't like that we say that we have the certification already. We will have a LEED Platinum certification shortly after CO, which is happening this week or next week. And once we have that, we have to get 12 months of energy bills to prove out that it's truly net zero. We turn those in, then you get the LEED Zero certification. So we should be homes 2 through 8 in the entire country, the entire US to hit that.
I was going to ask you about that because that was something we mentioned in the last podcast. And so that's all in motion, and you'll get in the COs like this week or next week.
We might have the TCOs today. Like really? That's how close we are. The homes
and those
are totally
here
done.
In Denver, right?
They're in Denver. Yeah. So, I mean, we're sitting at basically Locust and Yale. They're at Mississippi and Dahlia. So a couple miles from where we're doing the podcast right now.
All right. That is really, really cool. All right. So what else is going on in that world in terms of just like trends in general for building green and what redT is doing?
Yeah. So I think the trend just as a country and a lot of it's political, is that we are moving in the direction of building green. The energy codes are becoming more substantial. You're hearing a lot of municipalities start saying things like, we no longer, or at a certain time, will stop issuing permits if you're using natural gas to heat the home. I believe, unless it's changed, that'll happen in Denver in 2024. So you want to go you're going to start the process, say late 2024 to build a single family home. You're going to go in and they're going to say, don't put any gas on the plans. All electric, period, end of story. So we ended up being ahead of that curve. And then you have other builders out there that have their own green code. Just to build today's current code, like you're already building a home that's substantially more energy efficient than code of 10, 15 years ago. So a lot of the builders that are doing their own thing, they're just calling out the things that they're doing. And they might throw a couple of other ancillary things in there. For us, we intentionally use the U.S. Green Building Council in the LEED rating so that we have third-party verification, so that it's not us blowing smoke about how great we are and how green we are. We want that third-party verification.
What's got you most excited about the building green landscape the next couple of years? Like what trend or aspect has you most excited? As an investor, as a developer, as a business owner, what's got you most excited?
Well, when you look at the stats, and I didn't come prepared to spit out, exact percentages, but
I'll just ballpark it.
construction is a big part of the pollution, the air pollution that we have, the carbon emissions, things of that nature. So it's exciting to me to be doing the right thing for my kids, their grandkids. You open the news every day, you can probably find something about, melting ice at the polar caps, natural disasters, rising seawater. I mean, you just read and it's there. So if we can start to treat the planet a little bit better than we historically have when it comes to home building, comes to construction, to me, it's exciting to be doing the right thing for the future generations.
And I'm curious on like once you take all the building, all of them outside, once you have the unit ready for sale and you have just, your retail owner occupant, future home buyer wanting to come up, do you have a lot higher level interest or people come to you because you are like the Building Green brand?
So to us, we're playing the long game. You are seeing that, but there's so little inventory in the market that's built green, that's built with a LEED certification, or, whether it's a Department of Energy certification or it's an Energy Star certification. There's so little of it that your average buyer does not know that they have a choice. So when we get in front of them and we inform them, you really start to see them recognize, oh, this is different, this is better, this is a healthier home to live in. But it's going to take time for there to be adequate supply in the market to where there is a clear and obvious difference in the eyes of the buyer.
Yeah.
But the ones that we educate, it really does go a long ways.
And like the actual like building itself, is there like one aspect that people really like latch onto or like? Because I've noticed when I've developed products over the years, not development products, but just products in general, I've often been surprised. Oh, wow. A lot of the, a good part of the people really like, part 3 of this, which I found very interesting. Have you noticed any like trends like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we branded these light homes, light on the wallet, because they cost less money to operate. They're more energy efficient, low flow plumbing fixtures, things of that nature. So that was one aspect. We thought that would really resonate in the market. The next aspect is it's light on the planet. We're putting less carbon, less pollution, using more recycled materials, things of that nature. And the third aspect is it's a healthier home to live in. We ranked that number 3 when we first jumped in to go and said that will resonate the least. That has resonated the most.
Really?
Yes.
Just in terms, I guess people are like, wow, they will be healthier in their home. That's what they like the best about it.
Yeah. So the air quality inside is substantially better. When you use gas to heat a home, cool a home, even for your stove to cook, any of that unburned gas that isn't getting filtered out, and there is some of it, and some of the, the chemicals that come from that. There are a lot of studies, and you're seeing more and more of this in the news now, that some of those nasty things in the air cause asthma in children, things of that nature. So that's one big thing. And then there's other components that we put in the house that make it a healthier home to live in, whether that's smart ventilation.
But the air quality has been like the biggest, it sounds like?
Just the fact that it's a healthier home to live in.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So as we kind of wrap up this part of the podcast, I know 2 things I want to make sure our listeners, because we have a lot of investors, people that are looking to, buy a home as a house hack or a primary residence. We also have a lot of real estate agents that listen to our show. I know you guys have a lot of products coming online, and you also have got some really good interest rates. I think you have like bought the bigger packages where you can get people in like the sub 6 rate. Can you give us the quick plug for what you have going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's universally known as a forward commitment.
Yes.
I started to look into these about a year ago when interest rates are on the higher side, but they were clunky and they came with a lot of risk. The lenders have really started to refine that. So, I think it was 3 weeks ago, we bought our first $2 million worth of forward commitments. So I'll give you real numbers because I actually know those in my head.
Thank you.
We bought $2 million worth of forward commitments. The 30-year fixed mortgage was at about 7.5% when we did it. We bought those down to 5.99%. So we've got a rate under 6. that cost to us was about 7 points plus I think it was an eighth in origination. So it totaled up to be about $143,500 for the right to issue 30-year fixed. And I want to emphasize 30-year fixed. This isn't a temporary buy down. This isn't a 2-1 buy down. If you're one of those weird people that are going to actually live in the house for a full 30 years and never refinance it, your rate will still be 5.99% at 29 years and 11 months in. It's fixed for the entire life of the mortgage. So as the Fed beats the drum, rates are going to be higher for longer. Buyers start to pull back and go, gosh, if it's higher for longer, a temporary rate buy down is cool for a year, but then the rate goes up and I'm saddled with this ugly rate in the 7s or maybe even in the 8s that I don't like. So we see the thing that sidelines buyers the most right now as affordability, and that's driven by interest rates. So if we can remove that as an objection and give them the ability to actually afford the home, it's huge. And it's been a big differentiator for us in selling property. Literally while driving over here, I learned of 2 likely sales that are coming today, and they're both driven by the forward commitment.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
So if people want more details on there, is the best place to go to the website to see the inventory, or do you have a point of contact for that?
I would say they could go ahead and reach out to me.
Okay.
My email address is nathan@redthomes.com. You could probably put that.
Oh, we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, put it in the show notes, and they're welcome to reach out. I've got a flyer, so it's really easy for me to send back a flyer. We've got 33 homes that qualify under that right now, and we're going to keep buying the forward commitments. It's a capital intensive deal, and it takes a chunk out of the bottom line, but there isn't a buyer out there that gives a crap about my bottom line.
Nope.
So I care about them, and I care about the homes being affordable enough, attainably priced enough for them to be able to pull the trigger. So if we have to take a little margin out of our deals while rates are higher, that's okay. We take a little bit of margin out of the deal, and time will come where we will see those rates come down, and moving the product that we've got in front of us with a whole bunch more product coming, we will hit that sweet spot where we're building for a lower number, and then we catch the interest rate drop and the prices start to move. So in development, there's ebb and flow. There's times where your margin drops a little bit. There's times where it gets substantially better, and we don't control interest rates. So when they go up to the high 7s, low 8s, we make moves to move property and to be able to keep moving down the line and developing the next round and the round after that.
That's great. And you kind of like led on the next section I want to talk to you about, which is what's going on in just the development landscape. Everyone's just freaking out a little bit over the high interest rates. And I've really gotten to know your chief investment officer the last couple months, Paul, and he and I have nerded out some, not as much as I wanted to, just on what's going on in the landscape world. And like hearing Paul talk about it gets me more excited.
Yeah.
So I kind of hear your macro view of what's going on and what you're seeing, because it seems like developments is a really, really great investment right now.
Yeah. And I'll give it to you from 2 perspectives. So if you're just a buyer looking at buying, what do you want to do? Do you want to buy now? Well, you can have an appraisal contingency. You can have an inspection contingency. You can probably get some concessions out of the seller. You can negotiate a little bit, and you're not going to be out there every Saturday and Sunday writing 5, 10, 15 offers before you finally get a home. Or are you going to be with the herd and be foolish and wait until everybody signals to you, hey, now's an okay time to buy? And all of this wave of buyers that are sitting on the sideline comes out while we have really low inventory, and it's a feeding frenzy all over again. So I would look at that avenue and say, now's a really sweet time to buy. We're also looking at it right now and saying now is a pretty sweet time to be looking at land, not necessarily pulling the trigger, but we know that is coming pretty quickly. And what I mean by that is if you have 100 developers, not all 100 are buying now. 2 years ago, all 100 were buying. Probably 75 to 80% are on the sidelines, and they're waiting.
That many have pumped the brakes?
Yeah, they're waiting for things to become a little bit more certain. Or they will say, we're buying, but in reality, they're looking for blood in the water. They're looking for the best deal that they've ever seen. And what's interesting is I heard the stat yesterday and I haven't validated it yet, but year to date, we're negative 1%. We've lost 1% of the real estate values. Well, the average value of a home in Denver is in the mid sevens. So we lost $7,500 off the value. We're not in this free fall. Things aren't cratering. So to me, it's a really good time to be looking, and we are still buying, but we're being intentional about being slow and deliberate so that we can understand just how motivated the seller is to better inform us as to what our offer needs to be. 2 years ago, we competed on every deal we bought, on market, off market. It didn't matter. That's not the case right now. We don't have competition on a lot of the deals we were looking at. We had a deal that worked for us at $750 for partially more than half entitled townhomes. And it worked, and we didn't pull the trigger, but we expressed interest. Seller came back to us after a price reduction and said, "You guys are the right buyer. Just buy this thing for $600. Like I'll take the price down." And we said, we're watching a couple of comps. We're still very interested. When these comps move and we have an understanding as to what price point our end sales will be at, we'll get a little bit more comfortable. That seller was very motivated and grew pretty impatient quickly. And he came to us and said, "Guys, I'm willing to take a loss. We just buy it for $500. We pulled the trigger when it got to $500.
Wow.
So,
really?
Yeah. So we're being intentionally slow and deliberate in feeling out the situation. 2 years ago, if the deal worked, I'm looking over the shoulder of the acquisition person going, "Type that contract faster, get it in the seller's hands, get it tied up as quickly as we can." And back then we looked at deals when things were really hot. If you're hitting a 17% gross margin, we were taking a hard look at that deal and probably moving forward.
So when you say 17% gross margin, that is, what do you mean by that exactly?
Oh gosh, that's your, I think it's your sales divided by your total costs and spits out what your margin is. And I might've said that in reverse.
Okay. So just the total, like, hey, once everything's said and done,
Yep.
Once you sold it, you'd be about 17% margin, everything you bought it, put into it, costs, labor, fees, all that stuff.
Yep.
Okay. About 17% gross margin. Now,
I mean, we don't even look if it's under 20. So we're 3 points higher before we'll even look at it. Most of what we're moving on and offering on, we're mid-20s. I just put a deal under contract last week, verbally under contract. I don't actually have the written contract yet. It's a unique deal. It's a wholesaler who is actively tying up a property.
mm-hmm.
They came to us and said, "Nobody likes this deal because you have to keep one wall in order to be able to build a duplex here." And I looked at it and I said, "Well, I actually understand Denver quite well. As long as it's currently recognized as a duplex, we don't have to keep a wall. We can take the whole thing down." 34% margin on the deal.
Wow. So double what you were seeing a year ago.
We don't see stuff like that. Those are few and far between. So that was a really easy one to say, I don't care what the environment's like. That margin's outrageous. We pull the trigger, we tie that thing up. So verbally committed, have confirmed via text message. I'll actually have the contract Friday or Monday and get it fully executed then.
Now, from my very simple understanding of the world of development, it seems like you have two big factors in your cost. One is like the cost of land and the cost of construction, the materials and labor. And I know, construction costs has been, crazy the last couple of years since COVID. Has that stabilized? Are you seeing the deals coming from, hey, land values dropping, or where's the margin coming from? A little bit of both.
It's stabilized. Some categories have come down.
For construction.
Okay. Yes. So here's an example of something that happened for us late last year. It's a lot of fear and panic in the market in November and December. Mm-hmm. National home builders really pulled back. You heard stories like they went to the land developers and said, "If you don't cut the price of the lots in half, we're not buying." They went to the subs and said, "Unless you cut the cost of the labor by X percent," I think that was around 10 or 15%, "then we're not going to do business with you right now." Chased a lot of subs away. We were paying $17, $18 a foot for framing. There were some framing contractors we had our eye on, but they wouldn't work with us because they were doing so much work with the national home builders. We're now doing framing for $9.50 a foot.
Really?
Yeah. So we saved $8-9 a foot just in one category because there's less construction right now. 2 years ago, the national home builders had these guys so busy and they were, moved from this house to this house to this house, and they had a big long line of work. And in order to keep their crews busy, they had to come and work for us, which was great because we really wanted to court them and to bring them in because they were capable of doing things at a lower cost. So a lot of the materials haven't really come down, but we have picked up savings in a couple of categories in labor. So if anything, I think we're actively building, well, not think, I know we're building for a little bit less right now than we were 2 years ago.
Wow. Okay. So that's great news. So construction costs go down a little bit, and then you're seeing softness in the land value as well.
Yes.
Would softness be the right word for that?
Yeah, I think softness is the right word, and I do think it is a fairly temporary thing. As soon as
break out your crystal ball.
Yeah, so
start talking.
Crystal ball. It's a little foggy right now. I've been doing this for 19 years, and I would say up until the start of COVID, I always had a really good handle on it. I knew what was coming. I knew what was happening. March 13th was kind of D-Day. March 13th, 2020. That was the start of COVID. That was the day. I remember it. I went to the gym for the last time, literally the last time, because I ended up buying a bunch of equipment, and I now have a gym in my house because I couldn't go to the gym. I remember coming home that day, and I'm not the kind of person to talk to myself, but I went up the steps, looked at myself in the mirror of the bathroom, and I'm talking to myself in the mirror. I'm like, today's the day you might have lost your business. You didn't do anything wrong. Like, I'm having this conversation.
Yeah.
That's when things became unpredictable. None of us knew that May 8th, the market would become crazy and would stay crazy for a long time. None of us knew while the Fed was telling us inflation's transitory. Oh my God, rates are going to be 3%. And at the end of the year, they're going to be double that. And they're going to keep climbing, and they're going to get into the 7.5% range. The one part of my crystal ball that is crystal clear is we have an inventory problem. We still have an inventory problem. Even with the high rates and the slowdown in sales activity, you're not getting many new properties listed. So there will come a time the Fed will stop raising. They'll probably reverse course. I don't know definitively when that will be, but the developers and the builders that have inventory when that happens will be rewarded handsomely.
Just because once rates drop, buyers will be back out there is what you're predicting.
Yeah. So I said May 8th, 2020, the market really turned back on.
Yep.
And you know real estate pretty well. What happened then from May 8th of 2020 until about May or June of 2022?
Oh, we had 40% plus appreciation?
Yeah, in that period of time. And buyers got really frustrated, and they had to make 15, 20 offers to land a house. If somebody got a house on their fifth offer, that was a celebration. Like, holy cow, we actually got this done. It was an amazing thing for them. So the number of buyers that have hit the sidelines, whether they don't qualify right now because rates are higher, whether they feel like they can't buy until a rate starts with a 5 again, or even a 6. Maybe they're getting advice from family. Maybe they're getting advice from somebody else in their life, but there is a giant pool of buyers on the sidelines. And I think the large majority of them come off the sidelines when we hit a certain rate. You're going to get some off the sidelines at 6.5. You're going to get some off at 6. I think you're going to get almost all of them off at 5.5 or below.
Yeah.
And I do think that will happen. I don't know when it's going to be, though.
It'll be in the future.
It'll be in the future. We know that. We do know that it happened in the past, so we can call a couple of those. I'm in the camp, and this is a pretty bold prediction, but I'm in the camp of there's too much noise out there, and there's too many things going on. I haven't looked at the news in a little bit, but I think the United Auto Workers thing's still going. Our government put a Band-Aid on the shutdown, and they can't agree on anything anymore. So I think we're only about 3 or 4 more weeks from having that ugliness rear its ugly head again. Credit card debt's at an all-time high. COVID savings is almost gone. And there's just a lot of fear and uncertainty out there. There's geopolitical things. There's the war in Israel. There's the war in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
All of these things happening. Commercial real estate's kind of on the rocks right now. There's this extend and pretend going on in the commercial world with some of the loans. There's a lot of shoes in the air, and people always say, well, when the other shoe drops, the Fed will, their hand's going to be forced. I don't know which one of those shoes that I just described is going to drop and force their hand, but I do believe it's coming.
I think there might be a couple dropping at the same time as well.
That is quite possible. So, the mantra is higher for longer, and that may be true. And I don't think the Fed has lied to us since they told us inflation was transitory. We now know that was non-factual. But I do think something is coming, and I think it's coming sooner rather than later, that is going to move the needle. But if it doesn't, we figured out how to do business with forward commitments. The longer rates stay in the sevens, the more buyers become resigned to the fact that that's the new normal. I'm already seeing, we've got 7 or 8 projects listed right now. I think we've got 47 total units, some projects with units sold already, some that we're just starting sales on. And I see a healthy number of showings, even with rates where they're at right now.
Oh, that's great. So one of the interesting trends I've noticed going on is like the amount of new builds now being purchased over like existing inventory. I know that's gone up dramatically. I think it's around like 30% now of all sales. I imagine that's probably going to go up even higher as other builders like you get these forward commitments for lower interest rates, and all these owners that have just sitting on 30-year fix in the twos, they don't want to put their property on the market. So with that said, though, I'm curious because I've talked to other developers who are, you said they're out of the game. A lot of investors aren't putting their capital right now because like, oh, well, prices may drop in a year or 2 or 3 once your products come online. You're not losing sleep. You're not worried about having a massive price drop on, hey, you're building these townhomes, the price will drop in 2 years or 3 years once they come online.
There's always that worry, right? I don't think you can be a developer or a builder and bury your head in the sand and say, I have absolutely nothing to worry about. So, sure, potential fall in prices. We talked about these different shoes in the air, and you said multiple may drop at the same time. I don't know what that does economically. You listen to a guy like Robert Kiyosaki, and I might not get this prediction right, but he said something really far out there. And he said the worst case scenario is a civil war, and the best case scenario is a depression like we've never seen before. Stuff like that. I look at him and I'm like, you're just trying to get attention. You're just in the media. You were very popular once and you're a little washed up now, and you say something really audacious to get out there in front of people again. But things like that, when you hear it, they don't just go in one ear and out the other. They rattle around in your head for a little bit. So when you hear really crazy stuff like that, it does make you think. So I wouldn't say that I'm not worried, but I am extremely confident in the fact that we haven't built enough homes. We have an inventory problem, and that is going to persist for a long time because every single day, the municipalities make it harder to get permits. The NIMBY problem grows more and more. So if you're trying to do a rezone, we're doing one right now. Current land would yield 4 single-family homes. We have industrial as a neighbor. We have a park. We have another bit of industrial, and then we own the land moving in the other direction. So we don't have any immediate neighbors, and we sit at the bottom of a hill. We're trying to rezone that to build 26 townhomes because that is a more attainable product. We need more of it. And this particular neighborhood doesn't have a ton of it. And we're up against a battle on that. It seems like every time we do something where the neighborhood organizations, the general public has the ability to have a say, they come out with a negative stance. So when you have all of these headwinds, it means that you're not going to build inventory at a quick enough pace to solve this thing in 3 or 4 years. It's going to persist for, in my mind, at least 5, but more like 10 to 15 years. Yeah. And it may persist the rest of our lifetimes. This just may be the new normal.
So we might be turning into like how a lot of countries in Europe are, where it's just, there's not enough inventory, period. Wow. That would be sad, but I don't disagree with that being a potential. So I want to go back and talk about kind of like your view on like, hey, you're I know you have those concerns, but obviously you're still very bullish on the long term of developing. Hey, if we do projects now, in a year, 2, 3 years, you're going to be able to hit those numbers because, you're still in the 20% buying, not sitting on the sidelines. Plus a few months when we got caught up, like you're going into like scale mode for redT. I mean, I think when we caught up 3 or 4 months ago, the two main takeaways, you were like, hey, I hired a new CEO to start so we can go big time.
Yep.
And you had this massive printout. I was like, hey, what deals in the pipeline? You're like, give me a minute. I'll be back. Then you came out with an amazing printout with, I don't know, 3,000 or 4,000 like units across like, I don't know, 1,800 rows on there. It would just like boggle my mind. So like, obviously you're very bullish and putting your time and more money into like the long-term growth development in the short-term and long-term. Can you tell us more about what you're doing from a business angle and also what you're doing to like build that pipeline of deals? Because I found it so fascinating.
Yep. I wish I had a better memory so I could remember everything that you just said. So if I miss in a couple of areas, just remind me to speak to it. So overall for us, buying at that higher margin, it does insulate us a little bit. We do have some downside protection. I mean, if we're buying the deal I described, we bought 2x the margin we would have bought. That means things can get ugly for us and we still come out looking decent.
Yeah.
So, and we've gone through some ugliness, right? June of 2022 to January of 2023, whether you're looking at Denver County or you're looking at the metro area, we dropped 17% in one and 14% in the other. We've since recovered the majority of that. The projects that we've closed out during that time were not losers. They were lower margin than we anticipated. But when you buy right, you do have the ability to experience a little bit of pain on the construction side if it comes, and it does from time to time. And you have the ability to absorb some price reductions. In fact, one project, we sold our first 3 units prior to June of 2022 in the 8s. We sold the last 7 units in the low to mid 7s. We still came out profitable. So we took $75,000, $80,000 price cuts on the last 7 units, and we still came out doing okay.
Wow, that was really good to hear. Well, like I said, buy right, and you have the margins in there.
Yeah.
So I want to dig into the business side, and I say this out of respect, and it's a little bit of jealousy too, because when we met, the way I interpret it, you were like, hey, I have gotten to a point in my business and my career where I can now fire myself as a CEO, go hire a professional CEO, because your superpower is deal making and putting deals together. Yep. Hey, you run the business, but I'd say your superpower is deal making. Can you talk about that? Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs and business people that listen to this.
Yep.
And I've mentioned a few people, and there's just a lot of intrigue.
Yeah, so I started into this in 2005. In 2013, I was still running the acquisition side of our business because I loved it. I was good at it, and I had a lot of fun doing it. It was as you grow, like when you're a one-person show, you're the accountant, you're the salesperson, you put the deals together, and as you grow, you start to give up job functions and you bring in people that are better than you at those job functions. So I gave up acquisitions in 2013. Fast forward to, it'd be sometime probably late 2022 or early 2023. I jokingly said to somebody, I should replace myself as the CEO and I'll run our acquisitions department. And we kind of laughed about it. And the brain works at night while you're asleep. I woke up in the morning and I thought, maybe that's not a joke. That actually seems like a pretty good idea. And I had all these other things going on. We were going through rezoning in Arvada, contentious, like I talked about a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. And I remember this distinctly. I was in front of the house that we were rezoning. We were having a community meeting. This woman who probably weighed 75 to 80 pounds more than I do looked at me and told me that I was lazy and I wasn't doing enough and I wasn't putting in enough effort. And it took everything in my power to bite my tongue and take the high road, not say anything. And I did. And I drove home that night, and it was eating at me that I wasn't seeing my wife and kids as much. And I was spending time with people that were saying nasty stuff. You don't care about the neighborhood. You're being lazy, just whatever it was. And that night when I got home, my kids were already falling asleep. And I'm looking at them like half awake and saying goodnight. And I'm like, why am I running myself ragged? Yeah. There's something that had always sat in my brain since I first read it. And that's something called the founder's dilemma. You familiar with that?
Yes, I think I am.
I'll tell the audience so that they're
I'll make sure I'm remembering the same thing.
So the founder's dilemma, and I might not get it perfect, but there are people and this applies for me, that are wired in a way that they're great at starting a company and they're great at the early stages of growth. But eventually you hit a certain size where your management style, your leadership style, the way you think of things strategically hits a wall. And people that are great founders can usually get a company to a certain place.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was around 30 to 40 employees. And then I'm trying to lead all of them versus lead through the leaders. And I'm in the weeds when I shouldn't be, and I should be planning out into the future, which I still did that. But that really resonated with me. And I kept thinking to myself, you know what? I could probably go found another several companies, but there's got to be a better CEO out there than me. And I literally said this out loud. I said, I don't know that there are any more than maybe 2 or 3 people in all of Denver that can do acquisitions better than I can, but there's thousands of people out there that could be a better CEO than I could be. So it took a little humility to make that decision. I made it so I could see my family more. I made it so that the company could grow and go to the next level. The guy that we brought in as a CEO, his name is Vincent. In his last role, he played a key role at the executive level, taking a company from about 50 employees in 2 markets to 8 different markets, and I think north of 210, 220 employees in about a 4-year period of time. And I sat back in my seat and said, that is exactly what we need. And we went through probably a 3 or 4 month process, multiple interviews. He's courting us, we're courting him, feeling each other out. We pulled the trigger. His first day in the office was July 5th. And we are fully in transition mode, and we have big plans for growth. So if you go back in time just 4 or 5 years ago, we did all of our new construction in Denver and Denver only, Denver County, because we knew the ins and outs. We knew the people. We knew where the potholes were, so we could avoid stepping in those. And then we branched out, and now we're in Aurora, Arvada, Lakewood, unincorporated Adams County, unincorporated Jeffco, Golden.
So the last 5 years, you started in the Denver Metro.
Yeah. So we went from just Denver County to Denver Metro. As it sits right now, in Q4 of 2023, we'll close on a project in Berthoud. So now we're developing in Northern Colorado. We never had Leadville on radar, and we happened to come across a unique opportunity to pick up 28 townhomes that have been used as rentals since they were built in the early 1960s that somebody replatted in 2006. So we're now going to go forward in Leadville, buy this property, got some renovation work to do, and we'll sell those units off individually, and we'll sell them in the high 300s, which if you're in any of the mountain communities, product sub 400 is few and far between. So for us, that's now 3 markets inside of Colorado. And our disposition is once we've done those well, which should happen in 2024, we will look to move regionally from there.
Wow.
So we're on a decent growth trajectory right now.
What's the long-term vision?
So the long-term vision, and I'll call long-term 5 years. 5 years from now, we're in somewhere between 5 and 8 markets, recognized as a regional builder and doing significant volume in each one of those markets. Right now in Colorado, we're, as we sit here today, 608 units of development at some stage of planning, construction, or for sale. Take that, and then you multiply that by maybe 5 or 6 more markets, and we're doing substantially more business than we're doing today.
Wow. So I'm really just curious as a fellow entrepreneur. I imagine this was a very humbling, emotional, all sorts of stuff to go through. Did you ever expect you'd be able to hire a CEO better than you and kind of step away from the company, let it grow on its own and really focus on your superpower?
I never really had it on radar. I was really focused on running the business and growing the business and having a great environment for our employees to work in. So it really wasn't on radar until that day that I jokingly said I should replace myself as the CEO. And my brain kicked it into overdrive that night while I was asleep. And the wheels were in motion. Next thing I knew, I was making a pros and cons list. I was talking to people in my life that I really value their opinion as to what they thought of the situation. And a really good friend of mine, also a mentor, a bit of a business coach named Jerry, he said to me, "You made a pros and cons list. This is real." The first time you said it to me, I didn't know how real it was. And then when you made the pros and cons list, he's like, "I know you well enough to know this is probably going to happen."
And so what month was this? Did you have this Joe pros cons list?
I'm going to give you a quarter. I think it was Q4 of 2022, and we're presently in Q4 of 2023. So in a year's time, I made a joke, realized it wasn't a joke and that it was serious, did a little bit of soul searching to get comfortable with the decision that I was about to make, and then I started to talk to people about it. I never had to post the job. I ended up getting, I think, four or five referrals, and one of those 4 or 5 stuck and ended up being the guy that has taken the reins of redT. And we're in the thick of the transition, but I thought it was like a 60-day transition, and what a mistake I made. It's going to be a 6-month transition.
Naive Nathan there.
Yeah.
Huh?
Well, I mean, I've never done this before.
Oh, I know.
So, I mean, I went in with a set of expectations that were inaccurate, and the transitions caused me to work more hours, work harder. But I know what the light at the end of the tunnel looks like. And
it's probably getting closer too.
Yeah, it is. So we're 3.5 months deep in that transition, and we're now looking at each other going, it's about 6 months. And there's some things that he's already taken the reins on, he's off and running with. And if I had to put a percentage to it, he's probably 50, 60, 70% off and running. But the other 30, 40, 50 that we've got to get up to speed on is a lot of brain dump from me. And it's, you've heard the saying before, you're drinking through a fire hose. It means you're learning a lot at one time. I've been saying that Vincent's been drinking through 2 fire hoses at the same time, because there's 19 years of knowledge of how we run the business in my brain. And I've got to get that all out and into his brain. And there isn't a fun little wire to connect one ear to the other, and it just downloads at a high speed rate. It just has to happen organically through time. So we're doing really well. I'm happy with the transition so far. And I'm also excited for him to fully take the reins. And then I fully sit in the acquisition seat versus like I got 1 foot in and 1 foot out right now. But even partially in the seat, we're still making deals come together.
Yeah, it's been fun to kind of like just watch transition. But I think a while ago I was, hey, let's catch up. You're like, hey, give me a week. I got Vincent starting in like 9 days. Let's catch up then. And so I kind of got plugged in then and got to know more about the business. Got to talk with Vincent, who is an A+ player. That guy's legit. We're having a podcast too to talk business because that I think it'll be fun to do. But in terms of just like general like entrepreneurship scale, we've like a lot of fellow real estate entrepreneurs on here. Any like tidbits or advice you'd give people as you've scaled or looking back over the last 19 years or growing the company? Like, what would you go back and tell a younger Nathan?
Yeah, so something I think I would say, in being humble in this comment, I think early on my ego was in the way a little bit. So it's like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm doing it well, and we're growing and we're adding employees and we're adding deals and we're profitable on the deals. And really for the first 13 or 14 years in business, I didn't really have a business coach. Didn't really have, some mentors here and there, people that had been there before me.
Do you have a business coach now?
I do. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely do. So, it was 5 or 6 years ago that I thought to myself, you know what, if I'm going to continue to sharpen my skills and we're going to continue to grow, I've got to get people that have been there, done that before. And I've got to get new knowledge and a new skill set, and I've got to figure things out at a higher level than I've ever had to figure them out at before. So I joined an organization, and it was only business owners, presidents of companies, CEOs in the room. And I remember very vividly my first meeting, and somebody in the room said, wow, there is a lot of mental horsepower in this room. And I remember looking around and thinking, wow, the CEO seat is often a very lonely place to be. You don't have a boss. You don't have somebody to go to. You don't have somebody that's holding you accountable. And now all of a sudden I had colleagues, and they had similar problems, and they had, similar places that they wanted to grow, and they had similar employee dilemmas. And it was less lonely. and I was learning from other people, some of them far more experienced than me. And what's been really fun, so to come full circle, I felt like when I was in that room on day one, oh my gosh, these people are giving their time. I'm learning from them. They're more seasoned than me. And now many times we do it's a weekly call, and there's anywhere from like 6 to 12 people on that call.
Okay.
And I find now I'm giving back more. Now I'm the one who's providing the suggestions and the ideas, and oh my God, I've done that. That's happened to me. Like I know what to do. I can help you out. So it's pretty neat for it to have come full circle. Now that doesn't mean the group doesn't help me anymore. And it doesn't mean that I don't still get things from them. But I used to be the guy who took in all the information and I was getting a ton of value. And then I got to a point where it was 50-50, and now I'm giving back more than I'm taking. And that feels really good to be helping other people out that are in a similar seat that I was in maybe 5 to 10 years ago.
I really appreciate you sharing that. So thank you. That helps me a lot as an entrepreneur as I'm growing. Nathan, this has been a fantastic podcast. We're gonna have to get you back in the hot seat a lot more often. And we do have some plans to do get like Paul and Vincent on your team on the podcast. We got some webinars coming up, which are going to be more like technical and how to on underwriting development deals. You guys have a very interesting developer incubator program, I think is the phrase.
Yeah, we've
give the high level of that, because Paul mentioned, I was like, oh, this is sounds amazing.
Yeah, we started, oh gosh, I think we started working with Dublin Development probably 10 years ago, and those guys are doing every bit as much business as we are right now. But when they came to us, they had maybe done like a 1 or 2 single families ground up. They had done a decent number of fix and flips. So we referred to it back then as a move up developer, because we were already doing multifamily projects at that point. We had a good number of deals in the pipeline under construction, had already sold some units, and we had made mistakes along the way, learned from those mistakes, and we started really working with what we called move up developers. And now Paul refers to it as like a developer incubator program.
Yes.
But we're working with a decent number of people right now that have done just fix and flips or small projects, and we're taking them to the next level. So that's really rewarding for me. Back in the day when I was a broker, my favorite part about being the broker was helping people, helping them navigate their first home purchase, or helping them navigate a sale and a move up. And I really missed that. So now being able to help somebody that's a newbie developer, I mean, it's not the same exact thing, but it's still helping people. It's understanding what their goals and objectives are and providing the roadmap to get there. And in some cases, we're providing the property. We're finding the property for them. We might be doing the architecture, doing the construction, handling the sales and marketing. A good number of people that are in that incubator program, as Paul calls it, they're utilizing us for every different skill we have in-house.
Yeah, when he told me about it, I thought that was so cool. And I know so many people want to get into development, and sounds like this is a perfect way to kind of like learn, be around the right people, and actually get a project done. So we have a webinar on the books for that, not in the calendar yet. So either check the show notes, or if it's not on there, shoot me an email. We'll get you that webinar when it comes out sometime, I think in Q4. But very exciting stuff. Nathan, thanks a lot, man. Great catching up with you, and we'll talk to you a lot more here on the podcast.
I had fun being here today, Chris.
Thanks, everyone.